Hi everyone. We are on chapter 25 of UAE VAT Diploma, which is a prerequisite to becoming an approved tax agent, NFTA approved tax agent. This VAT diploma is offered by ATT UK, and it is called the UAE VAT Compliance Diploma. Now we are reading the chapter 25, role of the tax agent. So, who is a tax agent? So, it is defined as any person registered with FTA who is appointed on behalf of another person to represent him before the Federal Tax Authority and assist him in fulfillment of his tax obligations and the exercise of his associated tax rights. So, that's a tax agent. Basically, someone who helps a taxable person to take the necessary actions to remain compliant with the VAT law. FTA keeps a register of tax agents. Only those tax agents listed in the register and licensed for this purpose will legally be allowed to represent a taxable person in the UAE. Appointment of a tax agent. A taxable person can appoint a tax agent by notifying the FTA via the Emara tax portal. So a taxable person can appoint a tax agent by notifying the FTA via the Emara tax portal. It is important to note that this does not take away the taxable person's responsibility under the VAT or tax procedures law. So the taxable person stays responsible. Ultimately, it's the taxable person who stays responsible. It's just that he is appointing an agent to do certain actions. If the person terminates the services of their tax agent and dismisses the tax agent, they must notify the FTA and request to be delinked. It is the person's responsibility to notify the FTA for delinking with the tax agent. When the FTA receives the notification to dismiss the tax agent, all communications with the tax agent will cease. So all communication meaning regarding the that particular person. FTA will no longer communicate with the tax agent regarding that particular person who has dismissed that tax agent. When corresponding with the FTA regarding a client, the tax agent must include the client's tax registration number in all circumstances. Now, conditions to be satisfied to be a tax agent. Article 12 of the regulation on the law on tax procedures sets out the conditions on the qualifications of a tax agent. So, Article 12 of the VAT Executive Regulation. Article 12 of the VAT Executive Regulation on the law of tax procedures, on the tax procedures law, which is a separate federal decree law. So we have a separate executive regulation for that particular tax procedures law. So that executive regulation, Article 12, sets out the conditions on the qualifications of a tax agent. Different conditions apply on natural person tax agents and juridical person tax agents. A natural person can only register as a tax agent if the person meets all of the following conditions. A natural person can only register as a tax agent if the person meets all of the conditions, be of good conduct and behavior, have never been convicted of a crime or misdemeanor prejudicial to honor or honesty, even if they have been rehabilitated. They have never been convicted of a crime. Okay, so that's another. Or misdemeanor prejudicial to honor or honesty, even if they have been rehabilitated. Have the minimum education and relevant experience in tax accounting, or law in any of the following forms. So, experience of at least 3 years obtained in the last 5 years, and hold at least a certified bachelor's degree or master's in tax, uh, accounting, or law from an education institution recognized by the competent authority in the UAE. So that's 3 years education with a certified bachelor's degree, uh, or master in tax, accounting, or law. Experience of at least 3 years obtained in the last 5 years, and hold a certified bachelor's degree in any other field from an educational institution recognized by the competent authority in the UAE, in addition to a valid professional qualification from a recognized institution as may be prescribed by the FTA. And then experience of at least 5 years obtained in the last 8 years, and hold a certified bachelor's degree in any other field from an educational institution recognized by the competent authority in the UAE. Complete any necessary training specified by the FTA and pass any qualifying exam specified by the FTA. Have the ability to communicate orally and in writing in Arabic or English. So previously Arabic was mandatory, now or has come in. So it can be Arabic or English. Hold or be covered under valid professional indemnity insurance that is appropriate to the nature and size of the tax agent's business, and hold a license or work for an entity which has a license from the competent authority. Hold a license or work for an entity uh, which has a license from the competent authority. Uh, must not be a current member of the Tax Dispute Resolution Committee, TDRC. So that's the situation. These are the various conditions for a natural person. Now, the most important, the three things with respect to experience was experience of at least 3 years. First two scenarios are 3 years experience. Experience of at least 3 years obtained in the last 5 years, and hold at least a certified bachelor's degree or master's in tax, accounting, or law from an education institution recognized by competent authority in the UAE. That's one. Or alternatively, experience of at least 3 years obtained in the last 5 years, and hold a certified bachelor's degree in any other field, not necessarily accounting and tax, etc., from an education institution recognized by the competent authority in the UAE, in addition to a valid professional qualification from a recognized institution as may be prescribed by the FDA. Or third situation is experience of at least 5 years obtained in the last 8 years, experience of at least 5 years obtained in the last 8 years, and hold a certified bachelor's degree in any other field. So, 5 years of experience in last 8 years, and hold a certified bachelor's degree in any other field from an educational institution recognized by the competent authority in the UAE. So that's a purely experiential qualification. So there's no other qualification needed. Complete any necessary training specified by the FTA and pass any qualifying examination specified by the FTA. Have the ability to communicate in English or Arabic, hold or be covered with there's an indemnity insurance that is needed for such a role of as a tax agent, hold license to work for an entity which has a license from the competent authority, hold a license or work for an entity which has a license from the competent authority. So an appropriate license, professional license is needed. Must not be a current member of the TDRC, Tax Dispute Resolution Committee. Now, a juridical person wishing to be listed in the register of tax agents needs to satisfy all of the following conditions. Be licensed as an audit, tax, or law firm to begin with. Hold or be covered under a valid professional indemnity insurance that is appropriate to the nature and size of its business. So this is for the juridical person. It's a licensed audit, tax, or law firm, and then it also has indemnity insurance. At least one director or partner that meets all of the natural person requirements set out above is supervising the services provided by the juridical person and does not work for uh, another juridical person or for its benefit. And then meet any additional conditions prescribed by the Federal Tax Authority. That's for juridical persons. Article 2 of the Federal Tax Authority decision number 14 of 2023 states additional conditions required to list the juridical person as a tax agent, which are as follows. At least one of the partners or directors of the juridical person must be listed in the tax agent's register. At least one of the partners or directors of the juridical person must be listed in the tax agent's register. So that's an additional requirement for juridical persons. And then the juridical person must have at least one natural person registered as a tax agent for every 10 employees working in the tax field. So 10 employees in the tax field, one should be a tax agent. So, one should be a tax agent, one natural person. That's the case with the juridical person. Now we coming to the registration of the tax agents. The tax agents and the tax agency's user guide gives details on the practicalities of registration and other requirements. The registration of a tax agent can be done online using the FTA's e-services website known as Amara Tax. Once the registration is completed, a tax agent registration certificate, which includes the tax agent approval number, TAN number, will be provided. The listing in the register of tax agents is valid for 3 years for natural persons and 1 year for juridical persons from the date of listing. The listing in the register of tax agents is valid for 3 years for natural persons. So once you are listed in the register of tax agents, so you're registered for at least 3 years. It's the duration of registration for natural person and 1 year for juridical person from the date of listing. The tax agent may apply to the FTA to renew the listing no later than 20 business days before the expiration of its listing and shall pay the required fees by the date specified by the Federal Tax Authority. The agent must renew before 20 days. Any renewal request submitted after the elapse of the above period is treated as a new application and must meet the conditions set out above to be listed as a tax agent of the regulation of the law. So this is an article in the executive regulations on tax procedures. So uh, any renewal request submitted after the elapse of the above period will be seen as a new application for registration of tax agent. That we should remember. So it will all start from the scratch. Delisting and removal from the register of tax agents. The tax agent shall notify the FTA if they cease to practice their profession as a tax agent. If a tax agent allows its registration to lapse, that is, it does not renew its listing by the deadline for renewal, its registration is cancelled and its link to all the persons it represented with the FTA is removed on the date its listing expired. So the moment registration of a tax agent lapses and it does not renew, its registration is cancelled, linked to all persons that the tax agent represents. It is removed, so delinking happens. FTA may delist the tax agent upon uh, its request or in any of the following cases. So the FTA may delist the tax agent upon its own request or in any other of the following cases. Which cases? If the FTA determines that the tax agent is unable to fulfill the duties or functions or is no longer meeting the conditions to be registered as a tax agent. That's one. If the federal tax authority has serious grounds to believe that the continued listing of the person as a tax agent would adversely affect the integrity of the tax system in the UAE, meaning the agent has not been, very transparent or into unethical practices, etc. If the tax agent committed a serious violation of the provisions of the decree law or the tax law or committed or participated in tax evasion, it's criminal activity by the tax agent. If the FTA found out that the tax agent is a current member of the committee, so if any of these circumstances there, FTA may delist a tax agent. The FTA should notify the tax agent and its principals of the delisting within 5 business days of the decision and notify the tax agent of the reason for the decision. So if FTA actually delists the person, then within 5 days it must notify. The delisting results in the tax agent being delinked from all persons it represents. After 5 business days from the date of notification of the FTA's decision. So after 5 days, the whole privileges of the tax agent and the functionalities of the tax agent will come to a halt. Obligations and rights of tax agents. In performing its duties, the tax agent should attest, assist the person it is representing with its tax obligations according to the agreement between them. So, tax agent will assist the person representing. Tax agent shall maintain the confidentiality of any information obtained in the course of performing its duties without prejudice to any obligation to disclose such information under the law. So basically confidentiality, it will maintain confidentiality. Tax agent must also continue to meet his continuing professional development requirements, CPT, continuing professional development requirements. The new law, new provisions, new treatments. So tax agent has to remain up to date, stay up to date. Tax agent must refuse to participate in any work or plan which may result in a breach of any law by any person or may adversely impact the integrity of the tax system. So tax agents have to be above board. They have to be ethical. And then the one more, condition. Tax agents, this is the obligations, must keep information, documents, records, and data in respect of any person represented by the tax agent. So, retention, information retention, data, documents, etc. payment of tax and filing of returns. The payment and filing of the tax returns is sole responsibility of the taxable person. Naturally, it is the taxable person's responsibility. The appointment of a tax agent does not change this. So that's a very important element. Tax agent, yes, he can act on behalf of the taxable person, but the ultimate responsibility does not shift to the tax agent. Responsibility during a tax audit. The FTA is entitled to view the records of any person held by their tax agent and may rely on them for the purposes of a tax audit. This is the case even after the expiry of the engagement or the dismissal of the agent. So that's a very interesting point. FTA can reach out to a tax agent even after that tax agent has been dismissed by that person, by the taxable person. So post dismissal also FTA can go to the tax agent. And we saw earlier on that the tax agent should maintain information, documents, records, etc., related to any person that that tax agent was representing. Responsibility during a tax audit, FTA is entitled to view that we read. Tax agent and the taxable person have a legal responsibility to facilitate and offer assistance to the tax auditor. So then there is another area, records. The FTA can request the tax agent to provide access to all the information held for any taxable person they currently or previously represented. So FTA can access that information. Reliance on client information. In performing their duties as a tax agent, the tax agent may rely on information provided to them by the person unless the tax agent has reasonable grounds for believing that the information may be incorrect. So, yeah, I mean, the tax agent has to, there is no other way for him to perform, but based on the information that the client or or the person or the principal that the tax agent is representing, th- that person, that principal will provide. So the all the information that the principal provides, tax agent will only act upon that unless there is some other, very crystal clear uh, basis for which tax agent may have grounds to believe that the information provided by the principal is not correct. Professional standards. The FTA has published a guide, Professional Standards for Tax Agents, to indicate what is expected of tax agents. So these standards explain what is considered ethical conduct. So this code of ethics is based on the following five fundamental principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence, confidentiality, and professional behavior. So these are the five pillars of the ethical framework for tax agents. So each one is later on addressed. So let us go through that. For example, the first one, integrity. A tax agent must always be honest, fair, and truthful in their professional work. In particular, a tax agent must not knowingly or recklessly supply information or make any statement to the FTA or the taxable person which is false or misleading, or knowingly or deliberately fail to provide relevant information. So that's like must be very skeptic and careful and diligent in providing information or making any representation. Deliberately withholding information from FTA which is relevant to the matter at hand will be considered by the FTA to be gross misconduct and may be grounds for removal of a tax agent from the register. So that's a very key area. Uh, a tax agent must not engage in or be party to any illegal activity. Tax agent must not be party to any illegal activity. Any involvement may lead to removal of the tax agent from the register if convicted of a crime or misdemeanor prejudicial to honor or honesty. Something which is prejudicial to honor or honesty, or it is a crime or misdemeanor. So if a tax agent is convicted of that, then tax agent will be removed from the register. This includes colluding with other parties with the intent to evade tax or to help other party to evade tax. Tax evasion, tax evasion, obviously, no one can do tax evasion, but especially tax agents, that will be seen as a very extremely wrong thing. Tax agents' advice and work must be free from the threat of self-interest and not be influenced by the interests of other parties. So in other words, it has to be very objective. A tax agent must ensure that the advice given will not adversely affect the integrity of the tax system. So tax agent has to basically think above and beyond just one person. He has to even consider the integrity of the tax system also. A tax agent must also not obtain or seek to obtain professional work in any unprofessional manner. This includes making false promises or acting or on untested assumptions in order to obtain clients. No false promises or false representations should be made by any tax agent, and all of that which we just discussed comes under the concept of integrity, which is a pillar of the five pillars of ethical framework that was identified for tax agents. Now, second pillar or second area of the ethical framework, objectivity. A tax agent must be objective in all work undertaken. Whilst it is impractical to provide examples of every situation in which objectivity could be impaired, a tax agent shall not act for the taxable person if a circumstance or relationship would cause bias or would unduly influence the tax agent's professional judgment with respect to that service. How, if objectivity may be impaired through a conflict of interest, for example, a tax agent must consider their appointment with the taxable person. This is something very similar to the audit profession. In certain cases where the conflict cannot be managed, the tax agent may be required to declare themselves unable to act for the taxable person in that manner. In that matter, a tax agent must maintain objectivity and independence so that they can exercise professional judgment. A tax agent should consider factors which might affect their independence or objectivity in respect of a matter, such as long association with a taxable person or family relationships. So these can affect objectivity. A tax agent should immediately take action to address any relevant threat to their ability to exercise their professional judgment. A tax agent should not only seek to avoid conflicts of interest, but also manage situations where there may be a perceived conflict of interest. So, for taking into account how a situation may be viewed by the taxable person and third parties, where a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest arises, the tax agent should take account to manage that conflict appropriately in light of the facts of the case. So there's a clear existing conflict of interest, and then there is a perceived conflict of interest, meaning something which will be seen as such. So perceive means to be seen as a particular in a particular way. That's perceive. Professional competence. It's another pillar of the ethical framework for tax agents. Let's have a look at what professional competence envisages. A tax agent may carry out their professional work with proper regard for the technical and professional standards expected. In particular, a tax agent must not undertake professional work which they are not competent to perform. Yeah, so whether because of lack of experience or the necessary technical or other skills. For example, if a tax agent is asked for clarification on a technical matter and they do not know the answer, so the tax agent should write to the FTA for clarification, should refrain from providing advice. So yeah, absolutely, professional competence does require tax agents to only express their opinion or advice or suggestions once if they know a subject matter and they can comprehend the intricacies. The tax agent must hold the relevant qualifications and have relevant recent experience to act as a tax agent for a taxable person. So naturally, qualifications has already been addressed as one of the requirements to become a tax agent itself. The tax agent is expected to keep up to date with all relevant technical, professional, and business developments to develop and maintain their capabilities to perform their role as tax agent competently. So, latest development, that's why we have something called CPD, Continued Professional Development. The FTA expects that a tax agent will have a good understanding of the application of the tax legislation in the UAE and will monitor its interaction with tax agents to ensure that is the case. So that is something FTA is all interested in looking at. That's why they monitor the interactions. Where it appears from interactions that the tax agent is not meeting the expected level of professional competence, FTA may use such interactions as grounds to investigate the conduct of the tax agents further. So it is essential that the tax agent maintains a record of their continuing professional development on an annual basis. If a tax agent is listed in the FTA's register for either corporate tax or indirect taxes, they may complete a minimum of 20 hours of structured continuous professional development related to technical tax programs annually. So the CPD, structured continuous professional development, has been specified by the FTA as of 20 hours long. Note that if a tax agent is listed in the FTA's register for both corporate tax and indirect taxes, they must complete a minimum of 30 hours of structured continuous professional development annually. This requirement includes at least 15 hours of CPD focused on corporate tax and at least 15 hours of CPD focused on indirect taxes. If the tax agent fails to meet the required CPD hours outlined above within a given year, they must complete the remaining unfulfilled hours in the following year. In addition to the standard CPD hours required for that year. Note the following definitions. Professional development is defined as any activity with intellectual or practical content that would enhance the professional knowledge, skill, behaviors, or ethics of the tax agent or contribute to improving the quality of services provided by the tax agent. That is altogether called professional development. Now, some more definition, I think. Continuous professional development is defined as updating the professional knowledge and professional skills of holders of academic qualifications, allowing practice of the work of a tax agent and ensuring their compatibility with the ongoing developments of the profession, including structured continuous professional development and unstructured continuous professional development. So this is continuous professional development, updating of the professional knowledge and skills, etc. Structured continuous professional development is defined as any form of learning through, including but not limited to, interaction with others as a contributor, participant, or as part of an audience, or learning involving some form of assessment, and its completion can be verified by the authority, including all programs which have learning as the primary objective and that are measurable and verifiable in terms of hours spent on the learning activity or through attendance records, examination results, etc. Unstructured continuous professional development. Unstructured continuous professional development is defined as any form of learning where, including but not limited to, there is no interaction with other individuals, including the use of personal and isolated learning means, such as reading, research, etc. So this is unstructured continuous professional development. So basically, interaction is the difference between structured and unstructured. Now, another pillar of the ethical framework, which is confidentiality. A tax agent has a duty of confidentiality to their client, the taxable person. Additionally, they are also obligated to maintain confidentiality with the FTA regarding any information they acquire while carrying out their duties as a tax agent. So the duty to observe confidentiality applies without time limit to all information which has been provided to a tax agent by their client. The duty to observe confidentiality applies without time limit to all information all information which has been provided to a tax agent by their client. So basically, whoever is the client, confidentiality does not change. It is still a mandatory requirement. This includes information which is brought to their knowledge during or at any time after the carrying out of their engagement as a tax agent. The same duty of confidentiality should be imposed on all employees who work with the tax agent. So if there are employees of the tax agent, these duties of confidentiality will be there. A tax agent must never divulge any information acquired in the course of their work as a tax agent without the specific consent of the taxable person unless there is a legal or professional right or duty to disclose. A tax agent must never divulge any information acquired in the course of their work as a tax agent without the specific consent of the taxable person. So no information should be shared without the consent of the taxable person, unless there is a legal or professional right or duty to disclose. There can be situations where the tax agents have to disclose it to legal authorities and government authorities, etc. They may not use the information for their personal advantage or the advantage of third parties. Of course, this is privileged information. Confidential information cannot be given to third parties. As a general rule, when applying the code of ethics, a safe and proper approach for tax agents to adopt is to assume that all unpublished information about a taxable person's affairs is confidential. Very, very important distinction made. Unpublished. So if something is already published on the internet or otherwise in hard copy or whatever in hard format, that is public information. That is not privileged. That's not confidential because everybody has access to it. But if it is unpublished information, that is something which is confidential. Note that if the FTA makes a valid request to a tax agent for information relating to their client, the agent is legally obliged to comply with this, overriding their duty of confidentiality. So FTA is the premier tax authority of UAE. So if they require any information regarding tax matters, then the tax agent has to comply. Then this confidentiality requirement will not apply. Article 14 of the regulation of the law also imposes an obligation on the tax agents to respect the confidentiality of information acquired as a result of professional and business relationships. They must therefore not disclose such information without proper and specific authority unless there is a legal or professional right or duty to disclose. Both things are legal and professional right or duty. There can be a duty also to disclose. Nor must they use the information for their personal advantage or advantage of third parties. This has been discussed earlier as well. So, in short, uh, the client information is confidential, cannot be disclosed unless in a lawful manner, legal manner. Professional behavior, that's another pillar of the ethical framework for tax agents. Uh, the principle of professional behavior imposes an obligation on a tax agent to comply with all relevant laws and regulations in force in the UAE when providing advice and acting in their capacity as a tax agent. So there are laws, there are regulations, there are standards the tax agents have to comply with those. A tax agent should avoid any actions that may discredit the validity of the standards upon which the FTA has accredited the tax agent. Tax agent should avoid any actions that may discredit the validity of the standards upon which the FTA has accredited the tax agent. So the same criteria which made someone a tax agent, if it is violated, the person may lose the status. Professional behavior encompasses a tax agent's business dealings, but also covers conduct in a tax agent's personal life or in a private capacity. So, professional behavior encompasses a tax agent's business dealings, but also covers conduct in a tax agent, personal life, or in a private capacity. So, even in a personal capacity, private capacity, the tax agent has to, avoid any actions that may be unbecoming to the image of such a professional office, violating the professional standards. Note that if a natural person or a juridical person tax agent breaches professional standards, black points will be assigned as follows. If the violation is committed by a natural person tax agent who does not work for a juridical person tax agent, black point will be applied to the natural person tax agent. If the violation is committed by a natural person tax agent working for a juridical person tax agent, black points will be applied to both the natural person tax agent and the juridical person tax agent. If a violation is committed by a representative of a juridical person tax agent and the violation relates to or impacts the client represented by the juridical person tax agent, black points will be applied to both natural person tax agent representing the client and the juridical person tax agent. So, uh, if a violation is committed by a representative of a juridical person tax agent and the violation does not relate to or affect the client represented by the juridical person tax agent, black points will only be applied to the juridical person tax agent. The last one, let us read again. If a violation is committed by a representative of a juridical person tax agent. So there was a company, juridical person, which was registered with FT as a tax agent. And one of the representatives of that company committed a violation. Now, it says representative, does not necessarily mean it's a tax agent, natural person tax agent. So it's only a representative of the legal person tax agent. And the violation does not relate or affect the client represented by the juridical person tax agent. So that violation did not affect the client. Okay. Then what will happen? Black points will only be given to the legal person, to the juridical person, basically, tax agent. So the full list of violations with their black points awarded can be found in FTA decision number 1 of 2024. So that's about it. This was the chapter on the role of tax agent. So after that, inshallah, we will look at the next chapter on excise tax. Thank you very much.